The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and fading hope, a sterile cage for a spirit too bright to be contained. Chris Hemsworth stood by the bed, his broad shoulders slumped, his trademark grin nowhere to be found. His hands, usually steady enough to wield a god's hammer, trembled as he clutched a small, worn-through action figure. Beside him lay Ellie Harper, 9 years old, her bald head gleaming under the fluorescent lights, her eyes still sparkling with a defiance that leukemia couldn't steal. They'd met 2 years earlier at a fan event in Sydney. Ellie, bold and tiny, had pushed through the crowd, clutching a handmade poster that read, "Thor, you're my hero." Her infectious laugh and quick wit had stopped Chris in his tracks. She wasn't starstruck, she was fearless, teasing him about his fake hammer and demanding a piggyback ride. Chris, charmed, had knelt to her level, signing her poster with a flourish and a promise. "I'll see you again, kiddo." They kept in touch, letters, video calls, even a surprise visit to her school. Ellie's dream was to be a superhero, and Chris, in his own way, wanted to make that real for her. But now, the monitors beeped softly, a cruel metronome counting down. Ellie's parents sat across the room, their faces etched with grief. She'd been in remission once, but the cancer had returned, fiercer, unyielding. Chris had flown in from a film set, canceling a day's shoot, when he'd heard she was slipping. "You came," Ellie whispered, her voice a fragile thread. She reached for the Thor figure, her fingers brushing his. "You're still my hero, Chris." Her smile was a blade, cutting through his heart. He wanted to promise her the world, health, time, a future, but all he could do was nod, his throat tight with unshed tears. "I'm here, Ellie," he managed, his voice cracking. "Always." She closed her eyes, her hand falling limp. The room grew still, the beeping slowing, then stopping. Chris stood frozen, the action figure digging into his palm. Ellie's mother let out a choked sob. Her father stared at the floor. Chris felt the weight of his own helplessness, a superstar powerless against the enemy that had stolen her light. He left the hospital under a gray dawn, Ellie's third figure in his pocket, her last words looping in his mind. He'd failed her. Fame, money, strength, none of it had mattered. As he stepped into the waiting car, a thought struck him, sharp and unyielding. This can't be the end of her story. But what could he do? The question haunted him, a seed of purpose planted in grief, demanding to grow. Chris sat in his Los Angeles home, the Thor figure on his desk, its plastic eyes staring accusingly. Weeks had passed since Ellie's funeral, but her absence was a wound that wouldn't close. He'd attended the service in secret, slipping into the back of a small Australian church, his cap pulled low. Ellie's parents had given him one of her letters, scrawled in crayon, addressed to my Thor. It read, "When I'm better, I want to help other kids be brave like you." He'd read it 100 times, each word a dagger of guilt. She believed in him, and he'd let her down. He tried to return to normal film sets, interviews, gym sessions, but it felt hollow. Fans screamed his name, but all he could hear was Ellie's laugh. Directors praised his intensity, but it was grief, not acting. At night, he'd lie awake, replaying their video calls, Ellie in her Thor cape, pretending to battle monsters, her chemotherapy port hidden under her shirt. She'd made him promise to keep fighting, no matter what. "Heroes don't quit," she'd said, her eyes fierce despite her fading strength. One evening, over dinner with his wife, "Elsa," he broke. "I should have done more," he said, his fork clattering to the plate. "I had all this power, and I didn't use it." Elsa reached for his hand, her gaze steady. "You gave her joy, Chris." That was real. But joy wasn't enough. He needed to do something tangible, something that honored Ellie's courage. The idea came in a flash, a clinic for kids like her, a place where hope wasn't just a word. But could he pull it off? He wasn't a doctor, wasn't even sure where to start. He began quietly, meeting with oncologists, philanthropists, and hospital administrators. They were skeptical, a celebrity's passion project, they thought, destined to fizzle. But Chris was relentless, driven by Ellie's memory. He pored over budgets, learned about pediatric cancer, and sketched ideas on napkins. The Thor figure stayed with him, a talisman of his promise. One night, he found Ellie's old poster in a box, her childish scrawl like a beacon. "Thor, you're my hero." He traced the words, his resolve hardening. By dawn, he'd made calls to his team, redirecting funds from his next project. He'd build the clinic in Sydney, near Ellie's home. It would be a place of healing, of courage, a legacy for a girl who'd fought like a god. But doubts crept in. Would it be enough? Could he turn grief into something real? As he stared at the poster, a new fear gripped him. What if he failed her again? The Sydney skyline gleamed, but Chris barely noticed. He stood on a patch of empty land, blueprints in hand, the Thor figure in his pocket. 18 months had passed since Ellie's death, and the clinic was taking shape, literally. Bulldozers rumbled, workers shouted, and steel beams rose against the horizon. The Ellie Harper Children's Cancer Clinic was no longer a dream, but a promise taking form. Yet Chris felt the weight of every decision. Every dollar spent, every delay, felt like a test of his commitment. He'd thrown himself into the project, sacrificing sleep and time with his own kids. Elsa supported him, but he saw the worry in her eyes. "You're carrying her ghost," she'd said once, gently. He couldn't argue. Ellie was everywhere, in the clinic's planned playroom, inspired by her love of superheroes, in the staff he'd hired, specialists who treated kids like warriors, not patients. He'd even designed a mural for the entrance, a girl in a Thor cape, hammer raised, stars bursting around her. But the process was grueling. Funding was a battle. Even his wealth wasn't enough. He'd launched a global campaign, sharing Ellie's story in interviews, his voice breaking each time. Donations poured in, but so did criticism. Cynics called it a PR stunt. Chris ignored them, but the barbs stung. He visited hospitals, meeting kids fighting the same war Ellie had lost. Their courage humbled him, but it also fueled his guilt. Why hadn't he acted sooner? Could he have saved her? One night, exhausted, he found a letter in his office, another from Ellie, tucked in a folder by her parents. "Dear Chris," it began, "if I don't make it, don't be sad. Be a hero for other kids." Tears blurred the page. He hadn't known she'd written this, hadn't known she'd faced her fate with such grace. The letter was a lifeline, pulling him from doubt. He worked harder, meeting families, ensuring the clinic would offer not just treatment, but hope, art therapy, family support, a place where kids could still be kids. As the clinic's walls rose, so did Chris's resolve. But on the eve of the opening, a call came. A major donor had pulled out, threatening the clinic's future. Chris stood on the construction site, the Thor figure clenched in his fist, staring at the mural of Ellie. Could he keep his promise, or would her legacy crumble before it began? The sun rose over Sydney, bathing the Ellie Harper Children's Cancer Clinic in gold. The building gleamed, glass and steel shaped like a fortress of hope, its mural of Ellie in her Thor cape glowing at the entrance. Chris stood before a crowd, families, doctors, donors, and kids in superhero masks, their laughter a fragile melody against the weight of the day. The donor crisis had been averted. Chris had covered the shortfall himself, draining his savings, a secret even Elsa didn't know. He hadn't slept, but as he gripped the podium, Ellie's Thor figure in his pocket, he felt alive. He'd spent the night writing his speech, Ellie's last letter open beside him. Her words, "Be a hero for other kids," were his guide. Now, facing the crowd, he faltered. The microphone hummed, expectant. He saw a girl in the front row, bald, clutching a Captain America shield, her eyes bright like Ellie's. His throat tightened. "This isn't about me," he began, voice raw. "It's about a girl who taught me what courage means." Ellie Harper was 9, and she fought harder than any hero I've played. She dreamed of a place where kids like her could feel strong, not sick. This clinic is her legacy. He gestured to the building, its playroom stocked with capes and toys, its rooms designed to feel like home. "We'll fight for every kid here," he said, "with the best care, the best hearts, and the belief that they're superheroes." The crowd cheered, but Chris's eyes were on the families, parents wiping tears, kids waving tiny hammers. He spoke of Ellie's laugh, her letters, her unshakable spirit. "She made me promise to keep fighting," he said, voice breaking. "I'm keeping the promise today." The ribbon was cut, the doors opened, and kids streamed in, their laughter echoing. Chris lingered by the mural, tracing Ellie's painted face. A mother approached, her son in treatment, and thanked him, her voice trembling. "You've given us hope," she said. Chris nodded, unable to speak. As the crowd dispersed, he pulled the Thor figure from his pocket, placing it on a ledge by the mural. It felt right, like Ellie was there, watching. He walked away, the weight of grief lighter, replaced by purpose. The clinic would save lives, carry her light forward. But as he stepped into the sunlight, a new question stirred. What more could he do to honor her? The answer wasn't clear, but for the first time, he felt ready to find it. End.